Let me introduce myself. My name is Emily, and I'm 23 years old, currently pursuing a degree in journalism at the University of Texas in Austin. I can already hear the thoughts swirling in your mind. So, you want to be a reporter? While that may be a straightforward assumption, the reality of becoming a journalist is anything but simple. My days are a whirlwind of lectures, demanding internships at the local newspaper, endless reading assignments, and a relentless stream of exams. It's a challenging journey, but I'm holding my own. Don't be fooled by the glamour often associated with journalism. It's not just about chasing breaking news and rubbing elbows with celebrities. The coursework is intense, immersing me in complex subjects such as media ethics, investigative reporting techniques, and the rich history of journalism. Each semester presents a new set of challenges, but I am driven by a powerful goal: to uncover the truth and tell the stories that truly matter. There are moments of doubt, times when I question my major, but stepping into the newsroom reminds me why I chose this path. It's exhilarating, the thrill of the chase and the satisfaction of crafting a story that informs and inspires. This journey has purpose. My daily routine feels like a delicate balancing act, a carefully orchestrated chaos. I rise early, navigate the morning rush, and make my way to campus. Then it's off to the newspaper office for my internship. By the time I drag myself back to my apartment near campus, I'm utterly exhausted. My friends often joke that I live a double life. Emily, the diligent journalism student by day, and Emily, the social butterfly by night. Weekends become my escape, a chance to unwind and recharge. Whether I'm dancing to live music on 6th Street or soaking up the sun at Zilker Park, I seize the opportunity to let loose and relax. Currently, I share a cozy apartment with some of my closest friends. It may not be the quietest living situation, but I cherish the sense of community and the buzzing activity surrounding us. We have movie nights, try out new food trucks together, and share stories about our week. These small moments of connection mean the world to me. As for romance, it's not at the forefront of my priorities. I've had a few flings here and there, but nothing that felt like a true fit. My friends tease me about being picky and independent, which is just part of my nature. They try to set me up with guys who seem interested, but I usually laugh it off. I'm not against romance. I simply prefer to take things slow and see where they lead. To be honest, I've never really had a serious relationship. Sure, there have been a few flings, but nothing that truly stood out. When my friends push for a potential match, I tend to keep to myself, not out of stubbornness, but simply because I don't feel the need to rush. Now, finally, summer break is here. I've been counting down the days, eager to escape the pressures of college and my internship. My plan is refreshingly simple: relax, recharge, and soak up the summer vibes. My friends are just as excited. They wasted no time organizing a trip to the Texas coast, and I must admit, the prospect of sun, sand, and good company fills me with excitement. It's the perfect opportunity to shake up my routine, enjoy some fun in the sun, and perhaps even step out of my comfort zone a little. On Saturday morning, my friend Chloe picked me up, and we headed for our coastal adventure. The girls were already waiting for us at our usual meeting spot in downtown Austin. I grabbed my bag, threw on my swimsuit, and stepped out the door. The weather was perfect, bright sunshine and clear skies. Everyone was eager to savor the day. When Saturday morning arrived, my friend Chloe picked me up, and we headed to the coast. The girls were already waiting for us at our usual spot in downtown Austin. I quickly grabbed my bag, slipped into my swimsuit, and dashed out the door. The weather was perfect, bright sunshine illuminated clear blue skies. Upon reaching the beach, our first task was to set up a little tent to stake our claim and keep things organized. The girls had thoughtfully packed a cooler filled with Shiner Bock and margaritas. It was the ultimate beach kit. Our plan was simple: enjoy the day until sunset without a care in the world. We spread out our beach blankets and turned on a portable speaker, filling the air with Texas country music. Just like that, the vibe was set. With the right crowd, days like these easily turned into cherished memories. It wasn't long before Chloe nudged me with a knowing smile and said, "Emily, look over at the next tent. That guy hasn't stopped staring at you." I laughed it off, but Chloe and the others were already on high alert. The guy was with a group of friends, all of them joking around and clearly enjoying themselves. Still, his gaze wandered in our direction now and then. In her typical fashion, Chloe couldn't help herself. Go for it, Emily. He's definitely into you. After enough playful nudging from the girls, I finally relented and started throwing a few glances his way just to play along. What began as mild curiosity soon morphed into a light-hearted game of exchanged looks and innocent flirting. The atmosphere became more lively as we sipped our drinks and laughed together. Someone had the brilliant idea to cool off in the water. We left our gear in the tent and raced toward the waves. The water was refreshing, just cool enough to chase away the summer heat. In that moment, pure freedom enveloped me. No responsibilities, no worries, just the sun, the sea, and endless enjoyment. Time slipped by unnoticed, and before I knew it, the sky transformed into hues of orange and pink, a reminder that it was nearly time to head back to Austin. Upon returning home, my mom called me over for a chat. She mentioned visiting Uncle George at his ranch in West Texas, noting that he'd been a widower for a few years now and could use a visit. Excitement sparked in her voice as she expressed her anticipation of seeing him again. I realized it had been some time since I had been to Uncle George's, and my memories of the place were a bit faded, but I fondly remembered how much I had loved it as a child. The idea of spending a few days there intrigued me, evoking a wave of nostalgia for the peaceful, natural beauty of the ranch. My mom spoke with warmth, her joy evident as she talked about how happy Uncle George would be to see us again. With each word, I started to feel genuinely excited about the possibility of visiting him. It seemed like the perfect chance to unwind, recharge, and take a break from the relentless pace of everyday life. After all, I still had the rest of the summer to spend with the girls. A few days off the grid, no cell service, no internet, sounded refreshing. The next day, we began packing our bags. My mom practically glowed with excitement as she carefully selected clothes and compiled a checklist of everything we'd need for our trip. My dad had to stay behind in Austin to manage his veterinary clinic, but I was thrilled to escape my routine life and spend the summer with the girls at Uncle George's ranch. The thought of some days without cell service or internet was liberating. The next day, we dove into packing. Mom's excitement was contagious as she sorted through clothes and created a meticulous checklist for our trip. The drive to Uncle George's ranch seemed endless, but it offered a chance for Mom and me to reminisce about our frequent visits in the past. We shared stories about Uncle George that brought warmth to my heart. When we finally arrived, Uncle George was waiting outside with open arms. "Wow, Emily, you've grown into such a beautiful young woman," he exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. Now in his early 60s, he still had the same kind face and inviting energy I remembered from my childhood. As we settled in, he began sharing tales from the past, sparking memories I hadn't thought of in years, like the time I spent playing with Sarah, the neighbor's daughter, who now helped him on the ranch. Hearing her name flooded me with nostalgia, and I found myself curious about what she was up to. We spent hours reminiscing and catching up, basking in the warmth of shared memories. But as the day wore on, the fatigue from our journey began to weigh on me. Uncle George noticed and said, "Better get some rest. We have an early morning ahead." The next morning, I stirred from sleep to the gentle nudging of Uncle George. "Come on, sleepyhead. It's time to go fishing," he said, his grin brightening the room. He mentioned that Mom was already outside picking fresh peaches from the orchard. I felt a bit uncomfortable when he entered my room, but I dismissed it as part of his playful nature. Once we reached the lake, just the two of us, Mom stayed behind to finish her peach picking. Uncle George turned to me, teasingly asking, "So, Emily, a beautiful young lady like you must have a line of guys waiting for a chance." His light-hearted tone caught me off guard, and I felt myself fluster. Laughing nervously, I replied, "I don't really have time for that right now," eager to shift the conversation to less awkward terrain. Later, Mom joined us, and together, we reveled in the tranquility of the countryside. The setting was perfect for fishing as we sat by the lake, set up our rods, and let the peaceful atmosphere envelop us. It was a rare moment of pure relaxation, one I knew I'd cherish forever. Not long after, I felt a surge of excitement when I caught my first fish. The thrill was exhilarating, something I had been missing for too long. But then came the dilemma. Surrounded by the serene beauty of nature, I felt as if I had stepped into a magical world. The quiet moments alone were enchanting, filled with fresh air, the gentle rustling of trees, and the occasional bird call. Uncle George joined me, and together we untangled the fish from the hook. My squeamishness around slippery scales and glassy-eyed fish meant I eagerly called Uncle George over for assistance. He chuckled and handled it like a seasoned pro. We lingered by the lake for quite a while, savoring both the stillness of the water and the thrill of each catch. Eventually, however, we ran out of bait. Uncle George decided to head back to the ranch for more, leaving me to soak in my tranquil surroundings. It was a moment that seemed almost timeless, a perfect escape from the frantic pace of daily life back in Austin. But soon, the mosquitoes began to swarm, and the bites became unbearable, prompting me to head back to the house for bug spray. As I entered, I was greeted by laughter, a sound that filled the space with light and joy. Curiosity piqued, I approached the living room, wondering who was there. Uncle George had mentioned earlier that Sarah would be visiting, and the thought of reconnecting with her stirred up a wave of nostalgia, bringing a smile to my face. As I got closer, the laughter grew louder, and I could hear Uncle George's voice blend with Sarah's. But when I peeked around the corner, the sight that met my eyes halted me in my tracks. Uncle George was much closer to Sarah than I could have ever anticipated. He had his pants undone, while Sarah leaned into him, her face flushed as she whispered something in his ear. My heart raced, a mix of shock and disbelief leaving me frozen in place. Sarah giggled, urging Uncle George to hurry up before someone came. Reluctantly, I watched as they grew increasingly engrossed in one another, Sarah's soft gasps punctuating the air. Confusion settled in, along with an odd, burgeoning warmth that I had never experienced before. Without fully grasping my own emotions, I slipped away, forgetting the bug spray entirely, and rushed back to the lake, my heart pounding in my chest. The scene replayed vividly in my mind, a haunting image I couldn't shake. Once back by the water, I informed my mom that I couldn't find the bug spray. She sighed and said she would fetch it herself, leaving me to reflect on what I had just witnessed. A little while later, Mom bumped into Uncle George on her way back to the house. He seemed cheerful and called out, "Sarah's here. You've got to come back and say hi." As soon as I saw Sarah, I couldn't help but smile and rushed over to hug her. Her face brightened with joy upon seeing me, and her genuine smile helped me momentarily push aside my jumbled thoughts, including the lingering memory from earlier. Energetic and animated, Sarah took my hand and led me outside to the patio. "I want to hear everything," she exclaimed, her curiosity overflowing. She bombarded me with questions about how I was doing, what college life was like, and every little detail she could think of, reminding me of the bond we shared. I told her about my classes and shared a few funny stories about my professors. As we chatted, I gradually felt more at ease, and the bond we had forged in childhood began to resurface. When it was her turn to speak, Sarah laughed and shrugged, her playful smile illuminating the room. "Not much to tell," she said. "My life's pretty boring. I mostly help George around the ranch. I do whatever he needs." Her words ignited an uneasy realization within me. Helping George? I had seen how she assisted him, but I chose to keep that thought to myself. I let her words linger as I tried to stay engaged in our conversation. Eventually, Sarah excused herself to prepare lunch, leaving me with the opportunity to observe her and Uncle George. I noticed the subtle exchanges between them. Quick glances, secret smiles, and the occasional touch when they thought no one was watching. My mom, however, remained blissfully oblivious, engrossed in conversation with Uncle George, soaking in the relaxed atmosphere. After lunch, we all settled into the warmth of the afternoon. Uncle George pulled out a stash of homemade moonshine he'd been saving and, with his trademark playful grin, asked if I wanted to try some. Sarah, still bursting with energy, chimed in with laughter. "Come on, Emily, you've got to try it. It's amazing." I hesitated. I was usually more of a beer or margarita girl, but curiosity got the better of me. Why not? I decided to take a sip. Sarah, clearly well acquainted with the drink, poured herself a generous glass without a second thought. I took a few cautious sips of mine, and soon the moonshine worked its magic. A warm glow enveloped me, easing the tension I had felt all day. Unfazed, Sarah continued to laugh and chatter as the moonshine took effect. I felt myself loosening up, the awkwardness from earlier fading away. For the first time since I had arrived, I felt free to embrace the moment. Yet, a nagging thought from earlier lingered in my mind, the sight of Sarah and Uncle George together stirring my curiosity. After a few more sips of moonshine, I finally mustered the courage to ask, "So, what's going on between you and Uncle George? I noticed you two getting a little close in the kitchen earlier." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, but then a mischievous smile curled her lips. Leaning in slightly, as if sharing a secret, she confessed, "It's been going on for 2 years now. George and I have been seeing each other." Her revelation hit me like a jolt, catching me completely off guard. Taking a deep breath, she continued, "Emily, he makes me feel like a woman. From the very first moment, everything felt so natural. We just connect. He's funny kind. I've never felt so comfortable with anyone else." I could see a mix of excitement and affection in her eyes, clearly enchanted by him. I couldn't help but hang on her every word. "He was my first," she admitted. "The first man who really explored me and taught me what it means to feel desirable. After George, I've been with others, but I've always gravitated toward older men. There's just something special about being with someone who's more experienced." I don't know why, but I felt inexplicably drawn to her words. They made me blush, and as I shrugged off the embarrassment, she continued with a mischievous sparkle in her eye. "What about you? What's dating like in the city? Do you go out much?" The question was playful, and though I felt the warmth of the moment, I replied shyly, "Well, I haven't really, been with anyone yet." Sarah's eyebrows shot up, and her grin widened. "Huh, who knows? Maybe someone here will reel you in." She winked, and I couldn't help but laugh nervously, brushing aside her teasing. The next morning, I woke up early, still feeling the effects of the moonshine from the previous night. My head pounded, and my thoughts swirled in a hazy fog. Groggy and in my pajamas, I shuffled into the kitchen in search of water and an aspirin to ease the headache. To my surprise, Uncle George was already there, his unexpected presence catching me off guard. I froze for a moment, trying to shake off the remnants of the previous night. "Need some help?" he asked, his voice warm yet slightly hesitant, his eyes lingering on me longer than seemed normal. I replied, "No, it's fine. Just need something for this hangover," though I couldn't ignore the intensity of his gaze. It was unsettling, and I felt an uneasy shiver run through me. Preoccupied with my discomfort, I brushed past him, grabbed the aspirin, and washed it down with water. However, the memory of Sarah's earlier words echoed in my mind, her excited tone as she mentioned George being the first to teach her. Now, standing in that kitchen alone with him, his unwavering gaze left me feeling conflicted. Struggling with a mix of unease and an unnamed nervous energy, I desperately considered whether to stay or leave. Just as I prepared to escape back to my room, Uncle George dropped a bombshell. "You liked what you saw yesterday, didn't you?" My heart twisted in my chest. I hadn't realized he had been watching me, and although I attempted to act indifferent, my face betrayed my nerves. The atmosphere shifted palpably, and feeling overwhelmed, I hurried to my room, unable to shake the replay of the previous day's scene from my mind. That memory lingered, of walking in on him and Sarah, an encounter that had left me breathless and confused, swirling with feelings I wasn't ready to confront. The next morning, I woke in a quiet house, no sign of my mom or Uncle George. Presuming they had gone to the lake, I lingered in the kitchen until I heard their laughter approaching, voices bright with joy as they returned, loaded down with a bunch of bananas. Mom was busying herself with meal preparations while Uncle George greeted me with a warm smile, his enthusiasm bubbling over. "Tonight I'm roasting corn over the fire. It's going to be delicious." His excitement was contagious, and despite the turmoil stirring in my mind, I found myself looking forward to the evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the outdoor fire, the sweet aroma of corn wafting through the air. Uncle George, ever the entertainer, brought out his moonshine, determined to create another lively night. To my surprise, he coaxed my mom into trying some, and although she was typically not one for drinking, she agreed. What started as lighthearted fun quickly shifted as the alcohol took hold. Laughter erupted from her as she shared stories from her youth, displaying a carefree spirit I hadn't seen in years. Initially, it was amusing, but soon her laughter spiraled into slurred ramblings, and I grew increasingly worried. It was clear she was unsteady. "Come on, Mom. Let's get you some rest, I urged, wrapping my arm around her for support. She murmured something about wanting to stay up a little longer, but her heavy step spoke otherwise, and it wasn't long before she finally conceded. Once I had Emily settled into her room, I took a moment to ensure she felt cozy before stepping back outside. Upon my return, George looked at me with a playful grin. "Well, now the real party can start," he declared, raising his glass in a toast. I laughed nervously and sat down, deciding I'd stick to beer for the rest of the night. But George was persistent, pouring me another shot of moonshine and insisting I join in. As the drinks flowed, the atmosphere lightened, and the night became more vibrant. My attention drifted to George and Sarah. Their interaction was magnetic at first glance. What began as casual touches quickly escalated. His hand rested comfortably on her waist as she leaned into him, their smiles filled with a shared understanding. Each subtle touch and exchange stirred something within me that I couldn't quite identify, an undeniable connection that left me both intrigued and unsettled. Suddenly, a light rain began to fall, compelling us to abandon our outdoor setup. The night wasn't over yet, but this shift in environment hinted at unpredictability. As the rain intensified and the wind rustled through the trees, we rushed inside, slightly damp but undeterred. The cozy living room filled with the sweet aroma of moonshine and the sounds of laughter, while the rain drummed a steady rhythm against the roof, creating a comforting backdrop. Settled close to Uncle George, I could feel the warmth of the room enveloping us. George and Sarah exchanged soft glances and fleeting touches, their chemistry unmistakable. In an attempt to revel in the moment, I concentrated on the laughter and camaraderie blossoming around me. It was George's signature mischief that broke into the warm air. "How about a game of cards? But let's make it interesting. Whoever loses has to take a midnight swim in the lake." His playful suggestion sparked laughter and cheers. Despite the cold and rain outside, the thrill of the challenge drew us in. We began the game, immersed in friendly banter and groans of mock frustration as cards shifted between us. It wasn't long before Sarah and I found ourselves on the losing side. George stood up, laughter bubbling over, and declared, "All right, ladies. Off to the lake with you. And don't think I won't make sure you jump in." The warmth of shared drinks still lingered as we stumbled outside, our laughter spilling into the refreshing night air. I was the first to plunge into the icy waters, the shock sending chills through my body. Sarah followed soon after, and not long after that, George joined us, claiming he needed to cool off. As the rain cascaded down and moonlight danced upon the rippling water, the energy in the air shifted once more. George inched closer to Sarah, his hands finding her waist. The laughter faded, replaced by an intimate moment as he pulled her into a deep kiss right in front of me. I felt frozen, caught in a whirlwind of confusion and curiosity. Just then, the ever-playful George turned to me with a cheeky grin. "Do you want to watch again?" he teased. My interest bubbled to the surface, whispering an eager "yes, please" over the sound of the rain. With a knowing smile, George led us back to the small guest room at the back of the house. Inside, he laid Sarah gently on the bed, his actions a mix of tenderness and urgency. He kissed her deeply, his hands exploring her delicately. The air filled with her softness, and I felt unable to look away. Then, turning his gaze to me, George's expression shifted to one of seriousness, yet remained inviting. "Do you want to join us?" he asked, his voice carrying a weight that caused my heart to race. Sarah smiled warmly, reaching for my hand and pulling me closer. "Come on, Emily. You're safe with us," she whispered, her reassuring eyes beckoning me forward. I hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, curiosity pulling me in. The energy in the room was electric as George took the lead, moving with a blend of confidence and caution that drew me in. I felt myself crossing a threshold into territory I hadn't imagined before. Uncle George leaned in closer, his voice low and teasing. "It's time to unveil that little treasure of yours." I tried to relax, and with surprising gentleness, he guided me through a moment I had held on to for years. He moved deliberately, but there was an undeniable hunger in him, his passion nearly overwhelming. Yet, as his words urged me to explore further, uncertainty crept into my heart. This was already so much, and I wasn't ready to take that next step. "Can we save that for another time?" I asked, my voice trembling. He paused, nodded, and respectfully agreed, redirecting his attention to where we already were. Time seemed to blur as the moment lingered. Finally, he turned back to Sarah, ensuring she felt included. Their chemistry reignited, and I watched, still processing everything that had just unfolded. Feeling uneasy, I reiterated, I'm not quite ready to take that next step. Can we save that for another time? He nodded again, respecting my request as he redirected his focus. Our time together continued. 3 of us enveloped in the aftermath of emotions I couldn't fully articulate. Eventually, we made our way back to the house, taking turns in the shower, allowing the warm water to wash away the intensity of the night. The next morning, Mom decided it was time to leave. We packed our bags, and a strange pang of bittersweet longing settled in me. There would be no chance to revisit the whirlwind events of the previous night, but the memories lingered, leaving an undeniable sense of curiosity. Looking back on those weeks at Uncle George's ranch, it's clear they transformed me. What began as a simple family getaway evolved into an unforgettable journey of emotions and unexpected discoveries. The nights were filled with laughter, games, and conversations by the lake. The electrifying moments between Uncle George and Sarah are etched in my memory, a mix of joy and confusion that, in its own strange way, helped me grow. I found myself grappling with questions I had never thought to ask. How do relationships evolve in such unexpected ways? How do we begin to understand the connections people forge, even the unconventional ones? Even now, as I reflect on that time, I can't help but smile. It was an intense, wild experience that opened my eyes to a side of life I had yet to explore. Those days in the countryside taught me that life is more complex than we often imagine, and sometimes the wildest experiences leave the deepest impressions.